Lucis Trust, a non-profit, non-political, and non-sectarian organization on the roster of the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations and concerned with the establishment of world cooperation and goodwill, presents Inner Sight with your host, Robert Anderson. He, with Sarah and Dale McKechnie, President and Vice President of Lucis Trust, will discuss philosophical and spiritual topics essential to everyday life. Now here's your host, Robert Anderson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Inner Sight. Inner sight is simply seeing that which is always present, but not yet fully recognized. You have, within you, the ability to see yourself and the world around you in a new way, with new eyes. So stay with us, and together we'll look at the world and ourselves with inner sight. Our topic for today is consciousness, part 2. And we also have something nice for you today. We have a gift that we're going to tell you about later, and we'll send it out to you. All you have to do is give us a call, but we'll talk more about that gift that we have for you a little later on in the show. Our opening thought is from the works of Alice Bailey. Alice Bailey is the founder of the Lucis Trust organization. Lucis Trust sponsors this show, and she wrote 24 volumes of books, and all of the dialogue that you'll hear on this show emanates from the works of Alice Bailey, as does this thought. What must be grasped is that all that is ever present. And I can't help but think of 20th century science that we're still continuing to explore and understand. And to me, it means it's very much, this statement by Alice Bailey is very much in sync with 20th century science, quantum physics, and the idea to me that Alice Bailey is setting forth right here, is that all that ever was, all that ever is, and all that ever will be does exist out there somewhere in time. We talked before about the expansion of consciousness. What psychological effect does such an expansion have on an individual?
I think it can be transformative. It can be like an earthquake, depending on what the expansion entails. These expansions of consciousness can occur for many reasons, from those kinds of induced experiences that anybody who remembers the 1960s can trace back to the use of LSD and other mind-altering drugs, to religious practices, to the quest for self-understanding that can be put into motion by a really deep psychological crisis. Any number of paths can lead one to an expansion of consciousness, and they can be devastating or exhilarating depending on how one reacts to them.
Yeah, they can have a good or a bad effect, and it's usually these expansions enable the person to see more and to understand more of the world beyond his little self, and as I said, it can have good or bad effects depending on how one is able to handle this new information, this new energy. And expansions can be vertical as well as horizontal. And by that I mean you can be there are these horizontal expansions. You understand more of the physical world, the tangible world in which you live in. But then there is the what you call the vertical expansions that are upward to the soul level or inward to the soul level, and one grasps more and more of that realm of consciousness.
One of the phrases from the Bible that I think relates to this topic is the saying that it was the parable of the man who built his house on sand, and his house was blown away in a storm and he was left with nothing. And then there was the person who built his house on a solid foundation of rock, and he survived the storm. And the whole point of that parable is to tell us that when we don't have a secure foundation in our lives and we undergo a crisis, then we experience a kind of devastating reaction that doesn't necessarily expand the consciousness. It can be contracting. If anything, it can turn you in upon yourself. Mm-hmm. But if you have that solid spiritual foundation under you, you can weather a crisis and emerge with a more expanded sense of who you are, an expanded sense of what your possibilities are as a child of God, not in the sense of an ego-flattering kind of self-knowledge, but I think that the power and the stability that come from knowing what you are capable of enduring and what you can weather and still survive, and how much you identify with the rest of humanity. These are all psychological effects, aren't they?
Yeah. And those expansions, if they're related to soul, to moving closer to the soul or opening up more to the soul level, then that opens one up to an inflow of energy, more powerful energies of the soul, and these can have very subtle effects on one's consciousness. They can lead to more stability, as you say, or actually instability. They can lead to, in some cases, perhaps even to a lot of anxiety and neurosis of different kinds. There is this sudden inflow of energy that maybe the physical brain or the lower personality is not yet ready to handle. So it makes it kind of difficult for all this stimulation comes pouring in, and we don't see it as that, we don't really identify it as that, but that's really what's happening, and often in many cases.
But these experiences, even when they are devastating to the personality, they can often be very fruitful in the long run. That's why new experience of all types is so often growth producing. The old bromide about how travel is broadening. It really is, because it leads you into new experiences, into contact with people that you've never met before, into an experience of cultures that might be very different than your own. That's one example of an expansion of consciousness that might have some discomfort with it, but it leads to a greater sense of the one humanity. The same with education. That can expand the consciousness. It takes a lot of hard work to pursue an education, but you come out on the other side with a broader sense of the world and your place in it.
Yeah, that's what, in fact, one of the sayings in the Bailey writings was, as a result of one of these expansions, one should become a citizen of the world. And that's kind of the long-range goal of these expansions of consciousness.
One of maybe it would be helpful to review. I think we were talking about this last time in our discussion of consciousness. That consciousness is the production, if you will, that results from the contact of pure spirit, pure divine energy with matter or form. And both are needed by God. The Spirit of God needs matter in which to manifest, and the contact of spirit with the material realm produces slowly, gradually, consciousness, which is the sensitivity to life, to the energy of life. Consciousness is another term for the soul, which is this awareness of being both divine in origin and capable of experiencing and manifesting in the world of form. Well, my point is that sensitivity is the result of this impact, and part of it can be painful, but it can also break down the borders that one has erected around oneself. And this is, I think, the whole point of expanding the consciousness, to break out of this self-imposed barrier that makes one, while he is living in the